Hello, Attorney Lee Marvin here today with another amazing and informative video for you. This time it's about the I-130 or green card petition process for siblings, okay? So the green card process for siblings is very different than for married couples. First of all, who can sponsor a sibling? Only U.S. citizens can sponsor one of their siblings. If you're a legal permanent resident, you don't have the right, okay? If you're a U.S. citizen, you can not only sponsor your biologically related sibling, but you can also sponsor half-siblings, step-siblings, and even adoptive siblings. There are different requirements about what is needed for that, but you can sponsor any type of sibling that exists under the law, okay? Unlike sponsorship for a parent, this is something that gets asked a lot. Unlike the sponsorship by a parent, either legal permanent resident parent or U.S. citizen parent, the marital status of your sibling who sponsored you doesn't matter, and neither does yours. Meaning, if you are wanting to be a legal permanent resident and you are over the age of 21 and you're married, you're still eligible to be sponsored. That's not true if you're being sponsored by your parent. It's one of those quirky things where if you're being sponsored by a parent, you have to be unmarried. You can be over the age of 21, but you cannot be married at the time of the sponsorship or you are ineligible, okay? It's not true for siblings, okay? So how do you start the process? So the petition process for a sibling all starts with the I-130. The I-130 is the petition for alien relative. That is the petition that gets everything going, and that is needed for this just as much as it is for marriage type relationship. So the I-130 gets the process started. So next the question is, what documents do you include? So again, it depends on the type of relationship you have with your sibling. The basic relationship is sibling based on the same parents that you have, okay? If that's the case, you have to prove the U.S. citizenship status of your sponsor. That's the one thing. And the second is you have to prove the relationship between you and your sibling. So that's birth certificates, okay? So pretty basic for that basic relationship. It gets a little bit more complicated if it's based on adoption. So if your sibling, your brother, was adopted by your parents, you basically have to show the adoption documentation that shows that your brother was legally adopted. And the important thing is that adoption had to have occurred before either one of you turned 16 years old. If you're above 16, then you are not eligible to be sponsored or to sponsor your adopted sibling, okay? Let's say that your sibling is based on step parents, okay? So step parent, you basically have to prove that your biological parent and their biological parents were officially or legally divorced from the prior relationship and that they got married legally in the new relationship, okay? That's how you do it for the step sibling, okay? It gets very messy and complicated for sponsorships or processes for people that are the product of a biological mother and a non-biological father or vice versa, okay? Immigration law prefers intact relationships, okay? So if your biological mother's different, but your biological father's the same, then you just have to show that your biological father, your joint or your similar biological father, was married at the time that both of you were born, okay? Very confusing. If you've heard of people that are called bastards, that's what they're talking about here. So if you are the product of a relationship where you were not legitimized, AKA there's a bastard child, then that's a problem for immigration. So you have to show that your sibling was the legitimate child of a married relationship. Okay? Some people are really outraged at this requirement. They don't think it should be this way. They don't agree with it. Whether you agree with it or not, that's the law, okay? So you need to prove that your biological father was married to each one of their significant others at the time that each one of you were born, okay? A little bit confusing. Again, whenever something's confusing, that should be warning bells going off in your mind that you need an attorney, okay? And you contact me, and I'll help you figure it out, okay? Let's see. Same mother, same biological mother, no issue. The relationship between mother and child is pretty much straightforward. It doesn't matter if the mother is married or not, because there is no doubt that the mother gave birth to the child. That's not the same for the father, because fathers can father children regardless of relationship. Mothers can give birth regardless of relationship, but there's no confusion as to who the mother is. With a father, there can be confusion because the mother could be with multiple partners, and you don't necessarily know who the partner is unless you have that additional information. So that's why it gets a little bit crazy with the relationships between the father and the mother for sponsorship purposes. So another difference between the sibling process and like a marriage-based green card is what's called priority date, okay? So basically this is a preference category process. The difference is immediate relative. If you've heard of immediate relatives or IR, if you are an immediate relative of your sponsor, there is no waiting period. If you're not an immediate relative, meaning a brother, stepbrother, etc., then you have to wait for the availability of a visa. Immediate relative means there is no waiting period. You can immediately move forward with the process, and usually that's if your parents are sponsoring you or if it's a marriage-based green card, okay? Those, there is no waiting period, but there is for the preference-based category. Preference-based categories for siblings, the category is the lowest possible category in this process, which means it's the lowest priority as far as what the government considers important. So therefore, all the more important categories above get the precedence, or they get the available visas first, okay? So the preference category, I think it's category 4. It can be quite long. Depending on where you are, what country, your waiting period for a sibling could be 20 years or more. So it's important to know what the priority date is. The priority date, again, is the date that the I-130 petition was basically filed for. Not approved, but when they filed it, okay? So they file the I-130, you get assigned a priority date of that filing, and then as it moves forward in time, it gets approved. They say, you look at your priority date and you compare it to the monthly visa bulletin, and you see where your priority date is on that list, and the list separates everything by country or by region. So it's specifically Mexico, the Philippines, India, I think China's in there, and then the rest of the planet, okay? So if you're one of those countries, you got to look at where your number is in relation to the number of available visas for that priority and preference category, okay? Again, very confusing, so call us if you need help with this, and we'll help you figure out how long of a wait it is. But siblings, it's a safe bet that it's going to be 15 to 20 years or more before you're going to be able to move forward with your green card process, okay? Let's see. What else here? So the green card, the difference between a green card approval of an I-130 and the actual receipt of an approved green card. They're very different. The I-130, or the petition for the alien relative, just means that your place is in line, okay? That means that's the start of your wait. You fast forward in time, and you go through the process through the State Department, your interview, all that stuff. That is when you get your green card. Again, the wait time is measured in decades, okay? So you got to be careful when you're analyzing these, when to know when you're going to be able to move forward and when you get a green card. I have a lot of clients, they say, well, yeah, thanks for the approved I-130. When does my green card come in the mail? I don't know. Could be 20 years. So don't be confused by the approval of the I-130 petition and the approval of a green card. Very, very different. Because after you get the I-130 and your visa is finally available to move forward, then you got to go through all the hoops with the National Visa Center and the embassy. Collectively, we call it the State Department. So the State Department handles all requests for people that have to have their interviews outside the United States. And you've got to go through all their processes. And there's multiple online filings you got to do. And there's all this scheduling of medical exams and documentation verification, and lots of things that are involved in this process. This process, I think, more than any other immigration process, is very clearly, intentionally designed for people to fail unless you know what you're doing. Unless you have an attorney. They don't want non-attorneys doing this because it's super confusing and there's issues that can come up, and they want somebody who knows what they're doing. So the government, I'm not trying to belittle them, but so it's as easy as humanly possible for the government to process these requests. These are complicated. There's a lot of potential issues, lingering issues. Don't think that it's just a matter of filling out an application. Lots of people make that mistake. It is so much more complicated than that. The National Visa Center process, the embassy process, is horrendously difficult. And I don't recommend anyone do it under any circumstances. I get plenty of people to call me and they say, hey, Attorney Marvin, I need you to help me finish this process. I started it, but I just don't know what's going on. Most of the time, I'm very reluctant to do it because there's so many problems that can happen from somebody who tries to do things that they've never done before, because this is such a difficult process. So don't make the mistake of trying to start this process without consulting with an experienced immigration attorney, because it usually doesn't go well, and the government loves to deny things if they see that you don't have a lawyer. So spend the money, spend the time, do it right, don't mess around because you will regret it, okay? Let's see, processing times. Processing times right now for the I-130, again, that's the very first step in the process. It depends where you live, but generally it takes minimum of a year, and it can be up to a year and a half or 2 years. Again, there's a massive backlog. If you watch any of my other videos, I've explained the backlogs and the problems with this administration and all the issues with COVID and Trump. All these things are still having an impact. So the wait time can vary depending on what state you're filing from, okay? The quickest it typically is about a year, okay? Once that's approved, again, that's not your green card. That's just the I-130. Then you got to wait for your visa to be available, which could be 20 years, could be a matter of a few years, depending on your relationship. Once you're able to submit all the crazy documents after you get the visa is available for you, it usually takes about, I'd say about 4 months to jump through all the hoops that the National Visa Center sets up for people before you even get to the embassy to be able to schedule your appointment and to go and have your interview, okay? So this process, beyond the waiting time for the visa, it can take up to 2 years. So just know that you're in for a ride, and if you're in good hands, you don't have to worry about anything besides being annoyed that it's taken the government so long to process. But again, make sure you hire somebody who knows what they're doing, because there's enough stress and there's enough delay as it is. You don't want a request for evidence or denials or some crazy stuff that comes up under this administration. There's a lot of weird things that have been coming that we've never had to deal with before. So it's a very tough time. Don't risk it. Do the right thing from step one so you don't have to worry about it. We do a lot of these. We would love to help you. Subscribe to us to watch awesome videos like this. Go to our webpage to contact us for appointments, for informational gathering sessions, or to hire us to help you with this process. We're here for you. I really want you to succeed. Thank you.